What's up, everyone? Welcome to Mets Off Day Live, presented by Planet Fitness. Join Planet Fitness for $1 down, $24.99 a month. The deal ends today. I'm Michelle Margaux, joined by Mets play-by-play announcer Gary Cohen and Mets analyst Jerry Blevins. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, Michelle.
Thanks for having us on, Michelle.
I liked Gary's enthusiasm more than Jerry's on that one, but that's okay.
I like Gary more than myself, too.
I didn't know it was a competition.
Well,
if I thought I was getting rated, I would have jacked it up even more.
Life's always a competition. But I got to start with the Mets offense. Not only have they been on fire all of June, but especially really showcased in the Subway Series. They were a machine sweeping the series. They got back to 500 for the first time since May 7th. Jerry, we'll start with you. What was the biggest takeaway from the Mets two-game sweep, in your opinion?
Yeah, for me, it's the depth of this lineup. There's no pause, no break. It was such a contrast from the other side with the Yankees having just Soto and Judge, and you can basically pitch around them. What the Mets actually didn't do very well. But the lineup is relentless with Vientos on fire, Alvarez doing his thing. You got a little bit with Harrison Bader in that 9 spot. There is no breaks when this lineup is clicking, and these guys just poured it on. They never felt like there was enough, and so even in the later innings when they had big leads, they just continued to put together really, really good at-bats. And so for me, that lineup depth was key.
Gary, I know that you've had a lot of experience with Subway Series, but how would you say the atmosphere was in comparison to other games this year?
Well, the Subway Series is always at a different level. First of all, you have both fan bases represented, and while the Met fans certainly had the upper hand, not only in terms of the percentage of fans in the ballpark, but also the amount of things they had to root for. I mean, 21 runs in 2 games was pretty impressive. But just to pick up on what Jerry was talking about the Mets offense, I mean, this all goes back to the middle of May when they put Lindor in the leadoff spot, which I thought was inspired on the part of Carlos Mendoza, because when a team's going bad, you don't want to panic. But he did something subtle enough that it changed things, at least on paper, and maybe in the mindset of the players. So that got Lindor going. And then you had the series against Miami where JD Martinez carried the offense. And now over the last couple of weeks, you had Nimmo get hot, and the 2 young guys, Alvarez and Vientos, carrying a bigger part of the load. And it just feels as though little by little this lineup has come together top to bottom. And it's just been so impressive to watch.
It really has been, and we'll get to a lot of what you said later in the show. But because it is Mets Off Day Live, and it is an off day, and you have a rare 2 days off in a row because you have the Apple TV game tomorrow. So we want to know, what does Gary Cohen like to do in the summer when he has time off?
I tell people this all the time. I do nothing better than just about anybody I've ever met. Work, I'm at 100, and off work, I'm at a 0. So I am very boring. I do not do a whole lot. I will be doing a lot of lounging and reading and playing with my dogs, and not a whole lot else. And of course, whatever my wife asks me to do.
Good answer. Good answer. Jerry, when you were playing, what was your ideal off day?
Oh, man, especially in New York, I think it's just sleeping in first and foremost without worrying about what time it was when you wake up is such a relief. I'm not a morning person in general, but my wife and I were talking about like our days in New York. Some of our favorite days are just wandering around the city aimlessly, popping in and out of shops, just roaming around, definitely getting a nice bit of food, both lunch and dinner, of course, but I just enjoy just walking the city in the summertime. It's beautiful. There's no care in the world, no worry. You're not worried about what time do I have to get to the field. It's just a day off of mental being locked in all the time and taking the physical toll of that. And so it's I would challenge Gary that I can also do nothing really well, especially yeah. But I really just enjoyed bouncing around the city, in and out of shops and stuff like that.
Yeah, a good mental reset. Well, Gary mentioned the two young guys in the lineup, but I want to talk about the baby Mets as a whole. So last season, they were baby Mets, and now they're all grown up. So some have found some success and some have not. So we're going to start with Mark Vientos. He has continued to showcase his power since he's really been made the starting third baseman. His latest accomplishment is being the first Met to homer in 3 straight at-bats since Robinson Cano in 2019. Pretty impressive. Gary, what do you think has helped Vientos really take this leap forward this season?
Yeah, I think the power was always there. It was the discipline that he really lacked. And talking to him, he felt as though in the off season that was his focus more than anything, was um, identifying the pitches that he should be swinging at and laying off the ones that he should not, doing a better job of pitch recognition, but also pitch location. Figuring out that if he reads slider out of the pitcher's hand, that if it starts in the middle of the plate, to know that it's going to be on the outer part and they can hit it to right field. But if it starts in the outer part of the plate, that it's going to be out of the strike zone and lay off. And it's really easy for us to say that watching games, but obviously the discipline that it takes to do that is something that he's developed over time. And you can see it, that the chase rate is down, and I think that's really something that has epitomized this team over the last month. He's not chasing pitches out of the strike zone the way he did last year when he, was not quite as disciplined a hitter. And the difference is palpable because when he makes contact, the ball flies.
Yeah, it really does. Jerry, are you confident in saying that Vientos owns the third base job, or do you personally need to see him sustain this level of success over a longer period of time?
Well, I mean, for this season, I think third base is his. I think he's shown a level on defense that he can play some defense over there. He's serviceable. I know there was a big question mark on if he can handle it, but I've been impressed with how he's done it. And then offensively, the threat that he presents, especially where he's at in the lineup, I'm not sure if they'll move him around. I trust what Carlos Mendoza will do. I think he's presented himself very well, his maturity, his growth as a player. Gary mentioned some of the things that he addressed with the chase rate. I think that to me shows the maturity. Once you identify a problem, when you're a young guy coming up to the big leagues, you don't know what adjustments to make, what questions to ask, and how to approach that. Once he identified a real problem and the glaring problem of chase rate, his ability to understand how to address that shows a level of maturity that even when he gets in a slump or finds that the league is adjusted to something and he has a little bit of struggles, that he's willing to do the work that it takes to make an adjustment himself. And so I think this job might be his, especially for this year. But you never know. The Mets are the Mets, and I think Brett Baty is a very good player, but he's definitely earned his spot for this year.
Yeah, his confidence hasn't seemed to waver. But you just mentioned Brett Baty, so let's talk about him. Back to tearing up AAA. He hit 2 more home runs yesterday. He's now batting .354 with 8 home runs, 20 RBIs, an insane 1.188 OPS in 16 games with Syracuse. So, Jerry, why do you think Baty is not finding that same success against Major League pitching?
Well, first and foremost, the pitching in the big leagues is better than it is in AAA, and so I think that's the first thing. And the second one is just comfortability in the box and with yourself. There's a level of maturity and growing as a big leaguer, as a player in general, to be able to adjust to that. Vientos has made that transition this year. I think Brett Baty is going to be a very good big leaguer. I think he's important. I think he still has a shot to be a very good Met and even make an impact this season. Being left-handed is a big help from him hitting. I think he's going to get another chance to come up and make an impact this year. I just think there's a level of adjustments and just understanding that hitting in the big leagues, it's the same game. You don't have to press any harder. You don't have to try to do anything. Just play the same level of baseball.
Well, you did mention that you felt like the starting third base job was Vientos's for probably the remainder of the season. Gary, do you see Baty fitting back into the current roster in any prominent kind of role, like where he would really find success in the big leagues?
Sure. I mean, it's anything's possible. You're always just an injury away from needing that depth, and that's what great organizations do. They don't just have one guy. They've got multiple guys at every position through their farm system, so that they're ready to make change if necessary. Baty has yet to prove that he can hit at the big league level, but at this time last year, Mark Vientos had not proven that yet, and now he's getting the opportunity and he's taking advantage of it. And Brett will have to make similar adjustments when he gets the next chance, and there will be another chance. But also, don't forget about Ronnie Mauricio. I mean, he's out all of this season, but he probably was the most impressive of all the young Mets. And I think before he tore up his knee in winter ball, he probably would have been the first choice to start at third base this year. So when he comes back next year, there's going to be even more depth at that spot. So there's a lot to talk about with these young players and the way this organization is putting together more of a fail-safe process for being able to deal with injuries.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, who ends up with that job in the long term and who can sustain it, because we've seen, like you guys mentioned, Vientos and Baty kind of go back and forth, and then you add in Mauricio, which didn't even cross my mind when I asked the question. Well, third and last but certainly not least, Francisco Alvarez, our last baby Met. The team is 22-3 in the last 25 games that he has played. So, Gary, I know that we are also impressed by him. We talk about it all the time. But is there anybody that he reminds you of from Mets past?
Well, not necessarily from Mets past, but the role that he has taken on as a 22-year-old catcher who is so engaged in the game and also producing at a frightening rate offensively right now. I mean, you look at guys like Yadier Molina and Salvador Perez. I mean, those are the guys that Francisco Alvarez has a chance to emulate. I don't know that he's going to be Johnny Bench in terms of hitting home runs or Pudge Rodriguez, but as a guy who can completely command a pitching staff and produce as an offensive threat, the sky is the limit for this kid. It's hard to shower him with too much praise because he deserves every bit of it. He has made himself a better player in every respect from the time he got to the big leagues. First in working on his defensive game, and then to fix the swing and miss in his game, and again, like Vientos, much more patience at the plate, much better job of pitch recognition, much better chase rate, and the results have just been off the charts recently. And to think that at 22 years old, he's already accomplishing that level. I mean, he gets compared, and rightly so, to some of the best catchers in the game as far as where his ceiling is.
Yeah, there's just nothing negative to say about him at this point, and hopefully it stays that way. But Jerry, from behind the dish, what has he done specifically that you feel has really helped this starting pitching staff get back on track?
Well, he's an excellent defensive catcher. And I noticed that in 2021 when I was in spring training and I got to throw to him. This kid got it back then. He was the way he has instincts and he works hard. Instincts, I mean that he understands what a pitcher's trying to do with certain pitches. He understands that, like for me, on instance, if I threw into a hitter, I wanted to make sure that I'm throwing in with intent, not necessarily to throw a strike, but to get in to back him off the plate. And he understood that without even a conversation. He would set up in off, and that just let me know that his instincts are key. So when he's calling pitches, he's not just going by the book. He's not just throwing suggestions out there. He has an idea, and that takes a lot of pressure off the starting pitchers, off the relief pitchers to come in. They can focus because he's going to have an idea how to get guys out. He makes adjustments on game plan in the middle of everything, and not to mention he is a rock-solid backstop back there, willing to put his body on the line, and he has a really good arm. So apart from the offense, which is the key to his ceiling, defensively, he's a guy that could have a career if he hit under 200 because of how good he is at controlling, calling a game, and throwing guys out.
It sounds like it's innate, it's within him, but also seeing how hard that he's worked just in the past couple of years. Who knows if it's innate, because you know that he can put in the effort to improve on whatever he wants to improve on. But switching gears back to the Subway Series, we made a Subway Series all-time team. The SNY editorial team put it together, and they did a list of the best team consisting of Mets and Yankees players who have played in the Subway Series era since 1997. So take a look at this, and then Gary, I want to hear from you first, and then Jerry after that. What are your thoughts on the roster? Is there anybody missing from it?
All right, so now I have to put my reading glasses on because I can't possibly read this.
They're readily available.
Let's see.
Well, I don't see my name, Michelle.
Yeah,
I blame the SNY editorial team.
It was me or Billy Wagner, and that's a coin flip, right?
All I know is that Dae-Sung Koo is not on the list. Had one of the most classic moments in Mets Yankees history. His double against Randy Johnson and coming home from second on a bunt, wearing a jacket with a weighted ball in his pocket. Absolutely classic moment. There's no Matt Franco on there. Probably had the most famous hit in Mets Yankees history. So, guys on the edges, but they've got all the stars on this list. El Duque's not on there. He pitched for both teams in the Subway Series. So
Severino's had a good career against the Mets.
I'll tell you who else is not in there from a Jerry Blevins equivalent standpoint. Mike Stanton was an absolute stud for the Yankees in a lot of those early Subway Series games. As a setup guy for Mariano Rivera. Jeff Nelson as well. Those guys really dominated late in games as the guys in front of Rivera.
Jerry, your thoughts on the roster?
Yeah, I think it's a good one. I think that you realize the star power when you look at these two teams combined over the years. It's such a fun event. I enjoy being in the city and feeling that and seeing guys, people walk around the city with their Mets cap and their Yankees cap, and they're giving each other a hard time. Like it's such a fun thing. And it's truly a unique thing in the city. There's LA has two teams, but they're so far away, and LA is such a different feel. I like having this debate because people really care, and it really draws in everybody's attention.
It's one of my favorites.
The only other rivalry that even closely equates is the Chicago one. But that's different too, because Chicago is 3/4 Cubs fans and the White Sox fans are in these distinct minorities. So it's a little bit different, but those people take that very seriously too.
Jerry, do you have any favorite Subway Series moments from when you were playing?
I do. I have a lot. I enjoyed pitching against the Yankees in that series. Like I always, it just, when the lights are the brightest, it's just more fun. Those are the moments you dream about as a kid, but particularly moments. I remember in 2018, we had a weird Subway Series where there was, I think, a rain out, and then we had to make up the game on a weird road trip where we went like Miami to the Bronx and then to another city. And it lined up that DeGrom was going to take the rubber, and he was angry. He was like, this is, as DeGrom gets a little grumpy sometimes, and he uses that as a challenge, as an edge to motivate him, which he never was short of motivation. But I think he went like 6+ and it felt like he struck out the world. It wasn't the cleanest game because the Yankees are still the Yankees, but I felt like he was going to strike out 25 that game. In a season that's one of my favorite seasons to watch, DeGrom pitching in 2018, that was definitely a highlight for me.
Gary, what about your top all-time Subway Series moment as a fan and as a broadcaster?
Well, I never got to watch Subway Series as a fan. Didn't start till 1997, so I was already a broadcaster then. The first game always stands out in my mind because, Dave Malicki was an unheralded pitcher. The Yankees were a powerhouse team. They had just won the World Series the year before, and it was at Yankee Stadium, and Dave Malicki pitches a shutout, and the Mets win the game 6-0. And what stood out about it was that by the time Derek Jeter struck out to end the game, the Yankee fans had long since cleared out, and the 15, 20,000, whatever it was, Met fans made so much noise at Yankee Stadium. I think my description at the end of the game on the radio was that the Mets scribbled their name on the walls of Yankee Stadium, and that's really the way it felt. That was the first game between two New York teams since the 1956 World Series, so it had been a long, long time since two New York teams had played games that mattered against each other, and it felt so monumental at the time, in a way that you can't really equate now, because it's become a standard issue kind of thing over the last 27 years. But that first game always will stand out.
I love that. We are going to switch gears to something very on topic for recent times, which is OMG. It is Mets infielder Jose Iglesias' song, aka Candelita is his musical name. He's releasing his song OMG tomorrow, and it has already taken over everything. The Mets clubhouse, Citi Field after a home run. We got to hear it a lot during the Subway Series. I know what I think of it. I think it is so catchy, and I love it, and I cannot wait for its release. But what do you guys think of the song?
I have to defer to you and Jerry. I have no earthly idea.
You haven't heard it?
It plays in the background when the Mets hit a home run, but I'm not really tuned in.
That's fair.
He's working.
I've got other things to do.
I love it. I think it inspires. I love it. Not just the song itself is catchy and it's a good song, but it reminds me of those rare team building moments, a character like that, a song like that brings unity. And this team seems to have this chemistry that's really worked since that team meeting. I think the characters that are showing up with JD Martinez's influence, Jose Iglesias' joy for the game, the young guys stepping up. I think this is just one key piece that shows how good this team and how much they enjoy being around each other. So for me, that sparks that joy, and that's the number one thing I miss since I've retired, is that clubhouse feel, because you can't find it anywhere else. And it just gives me that joy seeing the team rally around something silly like a teammate song.
Silly. I'm very serious about it. I think it's great. But
it
Jerry,
is great, but he's going to make some money on Spotify.
No sillier than Grimace. I mean, now we just have to get Grimace singing OMG, and we'll have complete synchronicity.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives me the same vibes as Edwin Diaz trumpets. I hope that it takes off and gives people that feel that they really deserve. And speaking of music,
Gary, hold on, Gary. I think you, when he releases a music video, I think Grimace is going to be in that music video.
Has to be prominently featured, yes.
So I hate to break it to you, unless you know something I don't, I'm pretty sure Candelita's music video is already shot, and Grimace is not in it. But we can always make
there's always the alt version.
Oh yeah, the explicit version with Grimace.
And remember that the internet can do anything.
The non-radio version. I love that. But Lindor switched his walk-up song to My Girl by The Temptations and has been red hot since. So Jerry, what was your walkout song, and how did you go about choosing it?
My walkout song for every season but one was Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. I actually got to watch them play for the first time live. I got to see them at the Cleveland Browns Stadium a couple of weeks ago, which was amazing. Still got energy at 80 years old. Amazing. But I chose it because I was around in Oakland, a bunch of these relievers that wanted, Metallica and this heavy energy. And I realized at an early age, or at a young age in the big leagues, that I can't pitch with that kind of anger and angst, that I needed to be in a softer mindset and to just kind of lock in mentally. And that song kind of epitomized for me the mindset that I needed to be a little bit more cerebral, a little bit calmer, controlled breathing, slower heart rate. And it's just a good tune, and it's fun. And I got a lot of good feedback from the stadium. My manager at the time, Bob Melvin, was like, every time he would hand me the ball, he goes, "You have the best walkout song in the big leagues. Do it proud." And it just put me in the right moment and the right feel of what I needed to do to stay locked in.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Gary, you have to have thought about this. What would your walk-up song be?
Well, first of all, Jerry has one of the greatest walk-up songs of all time, and I also got to see the Stones a few weeks ago at MetLife Stadium, and they were freaking fantastic. The 80-year-old men can move like that is really inspiring. Yeah, the other I love Jerry's, and I love Lucas Duda's walk-up song because he had Jimi Hendrix all along the Watchtower. That was fantastic. I would definitely have a Ramones song. I've tried to figure out which one. I've been advocating for the Mets to add a Ramones song to the karaoke list for the eighth inning. Rockaway Beach would be perfect. It's a Queens band talking about a Queens landmark, and it's catchy, and you can sing along. But I don't think that would be my walk-up song. I think I would probably do something a little darker, like Down in the Basement. Go check out the lyrics on that one.
I'll check that out for sure.
I'm shocked that if
I'm writing it
Cleveland
down,
made a
Gary.
request, that it hasn't happened yet. We gotta talk to somebody about that.
You know, they go for lighter fare. I don't think there's a great appreciation yet on the part of the powers that be of the iconic status of the Ramones in Queens lore, but maybe someday.
Maybe someday. Well, because we started this topic talking about Iglesias, on the field, Iglesias has been doing pretty well, and McNeil's been struggling. With Marte on the IL, Mendy now has an outfield spot that he can play around with. So, Gary, do you think that Carlos Mendoza should move McNeil to the outfield to get Iglesias into the starting lineup more often?
I think that might happen from time to time. You'd like to keep Iglesias sharp. I think they need to get McNeil going one way or the other. It was interesting the first 2 days, though, with Marte out, with left-hand hitters available, DJ Stewart and last night Ben Gamble, that Carlos Mendoza opted to go with the right-hand hitter against right-hand starters to get the athleticism of Tyrone Taylor in there, and that certainly paid off. Drove in the first run on Tuesday, hit a 3-run homer last night. Looks terrific out in right field. He made a couple of nice plays. That's been an interesting call on Mendy's part because he did have left-handed options to go to. So I think we'll see a sprinkling of all of those guys filling in. But if Taylor keeps going the way he's going, I think he'll get the bulk of the playing time.
Jerry, do you think the Mets should consider calling up Luisangel Acuna, who has been on fire in AAA?
I mean, they're considering everything. I think that the team chemistry now, I think the Jeff McNeil's defensive ability with the entire lineup kind of picking things up, he doesn't need to hit right now, even though it would be great, and he's certainly a weapon to get on base and provide some depth to this lineup. All things considered, Jeff's defense with the lineup hot, you ride with who you got. You got Jose Iglesias. The hard part about calling Acuna up would be, who do you get rid of? And with the way the team has come together, they would still figure it out. I'm not against the idea, but I don't see a glaring need for him to come up right now.
We are now going to bring in our social media master, Matt Spenley, for this episode's viral moment.
So kind. I like master. That's a nice one. Hi, guys. Hope you're having a great week so far. So there were some absolutely insane scenes last night at Citi Field. Multiple videos went viral of both Grimace being a bit of a king of the hill for the Mets fans. We saw a fan that was drinking a beer while getting poured on by the water that was crashing down at Citi Field. We obviously saw some of the lightning. That was insane. So here are some of the scenes. Jerry, what do you think about all of this that happened last night and some of the energy at Citi Field?
I think this speaks to, I mean, that is commitment. That's fun. You're at the ballpark. It's raining. You're already wet. Why not have a moment? This is what makes playing for the Mets special. These guys, they're They're a good group of fans. They're embracing the silliness that is Grimace, having fun, coming together. Like the feeling on the 7 train has to be electric for everybody coming into Citi Field. I love these moments. I love everybody's in on the inside joke. It just makes for a fun vibes, and this Citi Field is special in that reason.
I think we just got to loop the guy drinking the beer, having the water poured on him. It's hilarious. All right, Gary, I have to ask you. I have to ask your true thoughts, your true opinion on the Grimace narrative and how it's kind of galvanized the Mets fans and the fan base. What are your thoughts?
Anything that makes people happy, I'm completely in favor of. I'd love to give more credit to the Mets players and their increased awareness of the moment, which I think has been the case over the last month. But I'm trying to remember back in 2000 when the LA Woman became the theme song of the Mets clubhouse, and the players really grooved on that, and that became their rallying cry. Whatever works, I'm all in favor.
Fantastic. I was only 5 years old when 2000 came around, so I'll have to look into that. I'll ask our guys here if they can fill me in a little bit.
Check out the Baja Men too.
I know that one, Gary. I do know that one. I'm familiar with that one. LA Woman, not as much, but I know about the Baja Men.
Thanks, Matt. Gary, this is why we have you, because you have such a rich history and knowledge of before Matt
of mindless trivia. Yes, indeed.
All right, so Mets are the hottest team in June, and they looked like early sellers in May, so it's been quite the turnaround. They're 17-6 in their last 23 games, scored more than 6 runs a game. Team OPS is 888. So, Jerry, as someone who has been in these players-only meetings that people seem to think have sparked this, how can something like that really spark a team, or do you think it's just pride and timing?
It really can spark a team, and it's rare for it to have an effect. Obviously, they're playing at such a high level. Guys are coming through. But those team meetings, especially what they talked about, you get a sense that they talked about accountability, taking the pressure off themselves, showing up to the ballpark with the right mindset. Let's go have fun. Let's everybody put in full effort, and we'll carry each other. We'll push each other. Nobody expects us to win, so we might as well win now. I think that resonated with everybody. I love what I'm seeing right now. Like I enjoy everything about the way this team comes together. The joy in the clubhouse, the silliness, the pushing each other. There was a moment last night when Adrian Hauser's going for his first save. The game's completely out of hand. Like the Mets got it locked up pretty much. But Tyrone Taylor's playing right field. He chases down a ball in right and turns and makes an absolute laser throw to home. Didn't have to do that because the Mets already had a big enough lead. But that shows me that these guys are playing 27 outs. Everything matters. They didn't give away any at-bats. This is a relentless team. And sometimes it takes a team meeting to say, hey, guys, we're watching. If he didn't go for that ball, Adrian Hauser, might not have a clean inning. Who knows what happens in his availability. And these guys are like, hey, if you don't do that, if you don't go chase that ball down, you're going to hear from your teammates. And so this is the fun part. And sometimes it takes some guys getting into each other's ears for this kind of camaraderie to come about.
Yeah, I think a lot of that expectation also starts at the top with Carlos Mendoza. So, Gary, we've seen Mendoza stay even-keeled throughout the process, throughout the ups and downs. What are your early thoughts on his leadership style?
Oh, I could not be more impressed. The first thing that you notice more than anything else is that he's a human being, that you ask him a question, he gives you a straight answer. He communicates with his players incredibly well, but he also doesn't take any guff, and he holds his players to a high standard. Excuse me. And I think that his ability to stay even keeled during the rough times in May certainly helped. And the players called that meeting at the end of May, but if they hadn't, he was going to. And I think that they knew that. And there's a lot that filters down from the top, and between ownership and David Stearns taking over the baseball operations of this organization and hiring Carlos Mendoza, there is a seriousness of purpose now that has really filtered down. And I think also the addition of JD Martinez, I think that was an underrated move for this team because, the Mets veteran players, guys like Lindor and Nimmo, they have a certain style, but JD is a different dude. And I think that his presence in that clubhouse has made an enormous amount of difference. You talk about, as Jerry did, about players holding themselves accountable. And a big piece of that is them talking about game planning on a daily basis and holding each other to that game plan. And I think you've seen the palpable difference over the last month. We talked about Vientos and Alvarez lowering their chase rates. I think that's really been a team-wide phenomenon. This team is so much more disciplined now than they were before that team meeting. And I think that everybody involved, from Steve Cohen to David Stearns to Carlos Mendoza to the veteran leadership in the clubhouse to the younger players, I think everybody gets the credit. And it's been phenomenal to watch. It really has, because there's been such a palpable change in the way this team has approached its business on a day-to-day basis.
I'm very confident in going on the record and saying that from a player standpoint, I think that JD Martinez has made the biggest impact of any other acquisition since the start of the offseason. But we are going to switch gears because Jerry Blevins, you're going to be joining Gary Cohen in the booth together on July 8th in Pittsburgh. I'm also going to be there, but I will not be in the booth. So Gary, we're going to play a game of who would you choose between Keith and Ron? That's not that question. Don't answer that question. But who would you choose to be stuck on a desert island with?
You're asking me to choose between Keith and Ron?
To be stuck on a desert island.
Well, I'd probably choose Ron on the desert island because Ron is the guy who would be able to find the materials to put together the raft that got us off the desert island. I mean, you just have to know that when Greg Picker, our producer, one year decided when we went to San Francisco that it would be a great idea to put Kevin Burkhardt in a kayak out in McCovey Cove. The first guy to speak up was Ronnie. He said, "Oh yeah, I know the kayak guy," and he set up the whole thing. So Ronnie is resourceful in that way. So I think I would definitely go with Ronnie on the desert island.
All right, between Keith and Ron, who would pick up the check at dinner?
Keith.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or me. Or Ron.
Who calls you first on your birthday?
Oh, well, Keith never knows it's my birthday.
Can we even blame him?
That's not in it. That's not in his playbook.
Who's better at keeping a secret?
Oh, they're both great at keeping secrets, but we don't have any secrets, so it's easy.
Yeah. Good answer. Who would you want to defend you in a fight?
Ooh, that's a good one. Keith gets riled up easier, but I think Ron is a sleeping giant in that regard. So I would treasure either one of them on my side.
Like a silent assassin. That's interesting.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Jerry, after hearing these, do you think that you'd want to be a Keith or a Ron in the booth?
Those are two big personalities, and I don't want to be a Keith or a Ron. I admire what they've done. They're two of the best. I'm just going to try to be me and enjoy hanging out with Gary and watching some good baseball.
I feel like Gary is a really good parent. Like, he's not choosing favorites. He made it very balanced with his answers. It was good call. We are going to look ahead because we've got to wrap up our show pretty soon here. The Mets play 17 games in a row facing the Astros, the Nationals, the Pirates, then Washington again, then the Rockies, all teams around the 500 mark. So, Gary, what would you like to see from this team in this stretch before All-Star?
Well, the biggest thing is compensating for the loss of Edwin Diaz. They've got 8 more games to go before they get him back, and they're going to have to do a lot of roster manipulation. this weekend they're facing a red-hot Astros team. The Astros season has really taken a similar arc to the Mets. They were 12 games under 500, and they got back to the 500 mark yesterday, just as the Mets did. You've got to contend with a very hot offense right now. Altuve and Bregman and Alvarez are all swinging the bat extremely well. But the Mets, they've got 7 games with the Nats, the 4 with the Pirates, the Marlins and the Rockies, the Nats and the Rockies when they get home. So they certainly should be able to sustain the level of success that they've had. But the biggest issue right now is compensating for the loss of Diaz for the next 8.
Yeah, there's definitely some holes in the bullpen. And of course, that's also a domino effect if you think about it, because then, guys are pitching more often and they get more hurt. And it's a bad thing all around. Jerry, what would you most like to see from this team during that stretch?
Yeah, I just want to see continued at bats. This lineup is absolutely stellar right now. I want to see them continue, not necessarily to hit 400 like some of the guys are doing, but to keep that discipline, to keep putting together really good at bats, making pitchers work. That for me is the key. And then I'm going to steal Gary's answer here, because I'm also a bullpen guy. How are they going to handle the loss of not only Edwin Diaz, but Drew Smith was going to play a big role in that, being a high leverage guy. So I want to see if they can really, how they manage to hold on to and not get guys, overly gassed out, and how they manage this run of 17 games in a row is a lot of games for any bullpen, especially in this era. And without your biggest guy and one of your best guys, it should be interesting here.
And the other thing is that that during this stretch, as they manipulate their roster to maybe send down a starter, bring up a reliever, we're going to see Christian Scott back during this stretch, and that's going to be exciting because he'll definitely rejoin the rotation sometime before the All-Star break.
Absolutely, and hopefully they can just take it day by day and not think too far ahead here. But as we wrap up this episode of Mets Off Day Live, Gary and then Jerry, I think I can actually answer these for you.
I believe Michelle has frozen.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't hear the rest of that.
You're back. Now she's frozen again. I believe that what Michelle was going to ask Jerry is what you're going to do with the rest of your off day.
Yeah, Michelle, go ahead and answer that for me. What am I doing?
Well, depends. If your wife is in town, then maybe you guys will go walk around a little bit. And if she's not in town, I still think you're going to walk around, just not as much and not have as much fun.
Yeah, I might catch a show. I'm by myself. I'm flying solo here. I might go check out a Broadway show or go to a comedy club. I'll see what's going on in the theaters today.
Awesome. Gary?
2 things on my agenda: a nap and whatever my wife tells me to do.
You guys are the best. I love it. I hope my husband says the same thing when he gets asked.
Good luck with
both.
that.
Thank you both so much for joining us here on Mets Off Day Live. It's presented by Planet Fitness. Join Planet Fitness for $1 down, $24.99 a month. The deal ends today. If you guys need to get your baseball fix for whatever reason, you can always watch the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, who are playing Portland at 6:35 on SNY today. For Gary Cohen and Jerry Blevins, I'm Michelle Margaux. Enjoy your off day, everybody.